Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, McDaniel Motorsports. Today our test subject, or subject vehicle rather, is a 2021 KTM brand 450cc SXF. This is a track motorcycle primarily, but it's our do-it-all type bike, and this is my sled. Does everything really well. And today we're going to learn how to mount tires. A lot of you folks out there take your tires to get mounted at a shop. We've had some bad experiences with doing that. Brand new wheels getting scratched up, not tightening rim locks, all the little basic little things that are super important to us just get left. And typically the guy mounting the tires in these shops is the lowest guy on the totem pole, so maybe he doesn't know any better, or they just have too much volume going through the shop. So that's why we pride ourselves on doing everything in-house here at McDaniel Motorsports. So without further ado, let's get rolling. Okay, so we have our front wheel here. This is a DID brand, Dirt Star. This is what you would find on the factory edition KTMs. They come from the factory rather. They have a really neat anodized hub and black wheel with the fancy gold nipples, which was a had to have for me. So the first thing you do with these wheels when you buy them, they're bare. They don't have the anti-friction ribbons here, which in my opinion they should come with. However, they do not, so you got to buy them. If they don't have them, you got to improvise. And this is kind of an old school trick. Some guys use duct tape. I personally like to use electrical tape. It actually fits the groove better. So what you want to do, the function of this actually keeps the nipples for the spokes from rubbing into the inner tube itself, because these tires are very active obviously, and they hit some pretty gnarly terrain. So by putting this electrical tape over there, it actually forms a protective barrier between the wheel itself and the inner tube. So you don't have to do a bunch, just enough to protect the inner tube. So thing about electrical tape that, unless you're an electrician, you probably don't know, that electrical tape does not like to stick to anything but electrical tape. How ironic, right? Just trust me. So I usually go around twice just to get a nice protective barrier there, and obviously changing a flat is a pain, so it's worth the extra effort. So I'm going around, not pulling it super tight, but tight enough to stay in place. You want to go down right in the center of the wheel. So I'm just now going past that first. So that first wrap around. So I'm on my second layer here. Come back around to that. So we got 2 layers there. And that's how you do that. The next thing you want to do is you also need to make sure you buy rim locks. So the purpose of this part here is this thing rides in the wheel just like this. and this actually acts as a clamp to the tire, so it keeps the tire from spinning on the wheel. In the front applications, it's obviously not as important as the back, which are driven by the engine. So it's really, really critical that you have one of these and they're tight. So I'm going to go ahead and install this guy. Hopefully yours comes with the nut and a washer. And find the holes here. See, there's two. So there's one hole here and there's one hole here. So with my OCD, I like to do the valve stems where the branding is. So I'm going to go ahead and put this wheel lock in on this hole here. And I'm just going to punch it through. That was easy. And you want to leave these loose. You don't want to tighten them until the tire is actually on the wheel. So just like that. So now you can kind of see why and how this works. So you can see it loose. It'll allow me to put the tire on and fiddle around with the inner tube. And at the same time, we're going to tighten this down once we get the tire beaded up. So this is really the last thing you do when installing a tire. Okay, so here we are going to mount our tire. I've had these soaking in the sun for about an hour. It's a little cold. Do yourself a favor and leave them out in the sun as long as you can before you start putting these together. It's a little less effort when they're warm. If you live in a cold environment, I would highly recommend it. Maybe if your wife's not home, you could maybe use the oven at 200 degrees, but I wouldn't go any hotter than that. You don't want a tire fire in your oven. Your wife will be pissed. Something that you should know about these tires is a lot of them these days are directional. So you want to make sure you're putting it on the right way. So there's usually a little directional arrow on these guys somewhere. And this one is there. So it's actually pointed this direction. And the tools you're going to need to do this that are going to make your life really easy, if you have an anodized wheel and you really care like we do about our finishes, you want to buy some of these rim protectors. Basically the tire iron will go on top of these rim protectors to keep the wheels from getting damaged when you're using your tire irons. A nice set of tire irons will be worth their weight in gold. So I recommend having minimum 2. You see I have a third one here just to get you over that last hump. And then I have obviously a tire pressure gauge, a wheel lock wrench, typically they're 12 millimeter, and a valve stem core remover just in case. So it doesn't hurt to have 3 of these if you have 3 irons. We're going to try it with 2. So after you've looked at your bike a few times and check a few times before you start mounting these wheels, it's really disheartening when you get one all the way on and then you realize it's backwards. So look at the side of your hub. It's got a flange in the front wheel, only on one side, which would be the brake rotor side, and that kind of gives you an orientation of which way the tire needs to go on. So in other words, this wheel will be mounted like this on the bike, and our tire is actually supposed to go this way. So the backwards is like this. So now on the bike, and I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this because again it's a real pain. So now we have the arrow going in this direction. So here we go. Alright, so here we go. Just got my dish soap here and some water mixed up. Just use the stuff you got in the kitchen, it's just fine. Use a lot. It'll help things along. And notice at my 6 o'clock, I'm starting at the rim lock. So you want to get the rim lock in past the tire beads first and foremost. So I'll start with that. And you don't want to put both beads down. It's impossible. You just won't be able to. So you just want to make sure you can just get the first bead on. And I'm not gonna lie, I've chipped a tooth and almost broken fingers doing this. So just take your time. And I'm going to use the rim protector here on either side. And these will move around as you go. But just try when you're forcing this or trying to force this guy on, just don't take too much rubber with you, or don't try to like come all the way up here and think you're going to get the bead down. It's just not going to happen. So just go slow and take your time. So what I like to do is get one locked in over here first, and put your arm here, and then you can kind of start with one side. See how that, you gotta get it in position to allow you to start. Starting, it's the hardest part, really. Just gonna go here. Get that guy there. You just roll them out. And once you got it started there, you can move it up a little more. There we go. Now see, I've got both beads starting there. We can pop that off eventually. But like I said, getting it started is the hardest part. See, I'm struggling. However, it's for a good cause. Just gotta be patient and work your way around the wheel. There we go. And again, it's just that inner bead is all you're trying to get in there. Sometimes both of them go in, but towards the end you'll find it's just not going to happen. So that's when we'll move on to pulling the second bead off. So I'm going to pause and take these. Sometimes this just takes time. You just got to be patient and just work your way through it. Okay. Spin this guy around here real quick. Just make sure the rim lock's seated here. Sometimes the rim lock will actually help you keep the wheel, or I'm sorry, the tire in place. So it's important you get that guy first in its place. Make sure it's pushed up in the tire. Okay. There we go. So got that. So now you can see I've got the inner lip seated in the wheel right there. So now that's going to stay put. And I've also got this lip hanging out, which is going to afford us a little more flexibility when we're trying to get that first lip on. So let's try that again. Sound. Usually anodizing is pretty durable, so you don't have to worry too much about it, but try to be as gentle as you can if you care, which we do. And I'm still beating on things here. Okay, so with your forearm down in the back, just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. The first bead. And these rim protectors are kind of a pain sometimes, but man, they protect your wheel really well, so they're worth every penny to me, and they're cheap. They're not expensive. There we go. Get that guy out on there. And if you're stuck on one side, release the other one down. Let it just kind of sit there. and that's okay. It's not going to change anything. But you're working with very fine tolerances here, so the wheel has to obtain the rim. So there's not going to be a lot of slack, in other words. There we go. Do my best. Oh, I took off too much. Don't want to get greedy. Go back. We're nearing the end on the first bead. I'm trying to get this last bit on. I think the rim protectors add a little level of difficulty because they're thick, or thicker than if they weren't there. But you just got to use a little more finesse. And now I'm not pushing on the wheel here. I'm actually just helping the bead along, as you can see. And while you're doing this, don't forget to look at the back side of the wheel and add lubricant here, because this is under as much pressure as the front. So adding lubricant and paying attention to what's happening here. So you see I have a little bind here. The little finesse, and I mean finesse, we can push this along. Go. Got that first bead on. Didn't break anything. So, I know that looked like a lot of effort, but I've been doing this a long time and it still takes me a while. Mostly because I don't want to scratch the wheel. So, now you should have, now's a good time, and you should have a loose wheel on the tire. Or I'm sorry, loose tire on the wheel. But you want to make sure, see the rim lock here, you want to make sure that that guy is seated properly. And the best way to tell, again, a rim lock, go and pry the tire down and up. There we go. And that's gonna make sure that that rim lock is up in the tire. There we go. So see how I'm doing that? Picking that lip up, and then the rim lock should be up and past that. So now we have that holding us together just slightly. Okay. So, again, check the rotation before you continue, because you're gonna have to redo this, and let me tell you, it's not fun, especially with a cold tire. So looking at the bike, rotor side, the arrow is pointing this way, so we're good. So the next critical step here, and I highly recommend it, is to put a little air in your inner tube that you plan to use. And I would not reuse an inner tube. It's not worth your time. You don't know how old they are, and it could ruin your day of riding. So just buy an inner tube, and I recommend a heavy duty inner tube. And before you install the inner tube, you want to give it a couple pounds of air. Let me show you here. Just so it keeps its shape, just enough air to inflate it so it has its general shape, so it doesn't get pinched and roll over or anything like that. And speaking of rolling over, this is kind of an old school trick. We use baby powder on the inner tube itself. And the reason is, and be generous with this stuff, because what this does is it allows the inner tube to actually roll over. So if it gets bound up in the wheel after you've installed it, spread it around. The baby powder will actually allow it to move around safely without pinching. So this is a highly recommended method here, and everybody should have some baby powder left over, especially if you have kids. But this is always in my toolbox. Use it generously. Okay, and it has a little bit of air in it. I'm gonna put a little more, but not too much. There's a real fine line between not enough and too much. So there we go. All right, so now we have our inner tube. It's still pliable. Take a little out. You want to be able to push it in there without any trouble. So you're going to locate your hole in the wheel, the only one left after you've got the rim lock. And you want to start with that. So pull up on the wheel like that, or tire. Get this started. See what I mean? You kind of got to crush it and get it lined up there. Forgot to poke the hole. Use my valve core remover to poke the hole in the electrical tape. Those rim lock ribbons will have holes already made in them, so you can put them in. So just want to go around lightly pushing this in a uniform manner, taking care not to twist the inner tube. The more than I mean, it's gonna bind up a little bit in there, just the way it goes. Just put it in. And you'll feel the rim lock. You're obviously going over the top of the rim lock with the inner tube. Now once you have it in there and you can't see it anymore, you want to relocate the valve stem hole and find that guy. And this is the tricky part, because the back of the tire is pulling up while you're pushing down, so sometimes getting it from forward, like I'm doing now, makes more sense. And you gotta push down on the bottom bead of the tire to get in here. And once you're in, go. Gotcha. And take the little nut. You want to take one of the nuts off the inner tube, and I'll show you why. So I'm putting the nut on the inner tube valve stem loosely, but I am putting it on there. I never tighten those though. Ever, ever, ever. And the reason is if the tire does in fact slip on the wheel, it's going to shear that valve stem. So that's why I always leave those nuts loose. And you can also tell, let's see how the valve stem is cocked over like that? This is the only time you can straighten that out while the rim is loose on the tire. So you can straighten it out just like that. And you pull it up just to make sure. And I'm just tightening this to keep it located straight. I believe those are for installation. A lot of guys put them on even from the factory and are probably just fine, but that's just how we do things here. So this is your last chance to check the inner tube and where it's located. So especially when you're using tire irons to mount this last bead here, you can very easily pinch the inner tube that's in there. So rather than having to run to the motorcycle shop and get another inner tube, just take your time and go around the wheel and make sure the inner tube is all the way in. All right, we're gonna air it up. Here goes nothing. You're gonna see some bubbles on beat up. And you want to make sure that the bead, if you can see it, is uniform around the whole wheel. You can see that ledge. Let me break it off, it'll be easier to see. So now you can kind of see Dunlop makes I guess a rim protector that you see on cars that you can see that's uniform all the way around. So that means your tires, when beaded up, I would never exceed 25 psi on these things. There's just really no need to, and they're considered low pressure tires in my opinion. So make sure this bead is seated all the way. Around uniform. And the valve stem is straight up and down. Well, looks like we lost our rim lock bolt or nut. Let's check the pressure. All right. Oh yeah, way more pressure than we need. Did you know that if you use a low pressure gauge for a high pressure application, you'll actually ruin your gauge. It'll blow the diaphragm out and it won't be accurate anymore. So just be cautious when you're using these lower pressure gauges. So I'm at 19, it's way too much still. We run about 10 to 12, depending on the conditions on these front tires. I'm gonna have had good luck with that. But what's important here is that you set a pressure, and then the next day, or even later that night, come out and check it. So I'm at 10. I'm gonna leave it at 10, and I'm not gonna put a cap on, or I'm gonna put a cap on it, but I'm not gonna tighten that nut. Alright guys, so I've got everything aired up here. Appears to be holding air. Last thing I'm doing is going to tighten this rim lock. And this is probably the most important thing, especially on a drive tire, which is this is not. But you don't need to crank these things down. You just want to snug them, because it is a rubber to rubber contact, so it's not going to slip too much. But I guess theoretically, if you're a real big brake guy, you're heavy on the brakes into turns and stuff, I suppose the tire could slip on the wheel. So this just prevents that from occurring. It's also a pre-ride checklist item that we will be making a video about, how to prep your bike, and not only prepping your bike, getting it ready to ride safely. So stay tuned for that. So what we like to do here is, even though this isn't a drive tire, we like to run our valve stem nuts up this way, so if for some reason the tire does slip on the rim, it doesn't shear the stem. If you were to tighten this down, it would shear the stem. So that's what we recommend. And if you read any good reputable magazine, they will most likely be recommending the same thing, especially on the back tire. So don't let your buddy change that. He may see that and go, oh, your valve stem nut's loose. Shoo him away. Trust us on that. So, not too shabby. It's a nice looking wheel, huh? I know I like it. I'm excited. And you know what? The arrow's pointing the right way. Alright guys, we're on to our rear wheel now. Gonna put the rim protector on. This wheel is a little bit wider, so I'm gonna go around 2 times on either side to protect that inner tube from getting pinched by these spoke nipples. This might be a little repetitive, however, I think showing you guys more is better, and we'll leave it up to you to fast forward it. We don't mind. And again, you want to go around twice with this electrical tape. Okay, so that's 2. Now you can see I'm switching over to this side of the spoke nipples. And another thing about electrical tape is that you can actually change directions pretty easily without disrupting the tape and its adhesion qualities. Now, as you can see, I've protected those rim spoke nipples from gouging into the inner tube. Okay, I'll be right back with the tire. All right, so we've got our inner tube protection there, 2 layers, both sides. Now I've got my rim lock in place. Again, you want to leave these loose so they can move, because once you get that first speed on there, you want to be able to pull this up into the tire. So I don't want to tighten it down yet, but you can put it in there, down, just for now. And you want to find yourself maybe a carpet sample or something if you're going to end up doing this a lot. Have a padded table or even a wood table like that workbench over there would be really helpful. Again, just to prevent scratching. I've had my rear sneaker sitting out the sun. This tire is actually a non-directional tire, so it's really not, you don't have to put it on in any specific way, which makes things a little easier. Again, the lube is super important. Again, I'm going to start on the rim lock side to get it going. As you saw in the last portion of this video, it's a little bit of a struggle getting it started, so just want to take your time. Use your rim lock or your rim protectors. Nice. What I'm going to do is get this lock. I didn't show you guys this in the last video, but putting the rim lock in there is an added assurance that the tire will not move as much while you're installing it. See on the back side here, you can see that the rim lock is actually holding the tire there, so that's helpful. It's a good tip to know. And then keep it at your chest or your stomach here, just so you can hold it and control it. Especially on these back tires, they're a little thicker. Protector. So when you're prying this guy on, you want to make sure the outer bead of the tire is actually outside the wheel. It'll actually give you a better chance of getting it on the wheel itself, the first bead. Gives it some more flexibility, if you will. Got a little too greedy. Almost. These back tires are a little more tricky with obviously a thicker rubber. So now this is a plastic hammer. These rim protectors are pretty durable. got some lubricant here because back tire is just as critical because of the tight fit to be able to move. So use more than you think you need. Okay, I'm gonna keep chipping away at this. Alright guys, so we've got our inner bead on. Our rim lock is surpassed the tire itself here. That's real important. Sometimes you have to redo it at the end. We'll get to that when we do. Got the valve stem, inner tube's in, valve stem is straight up and down. Again, the nut is loose. Just so it doesn't pop back down in there. I've lubricated with the water and soap mixture around the inside where the down part of the tire here, just for added flexibility. And let me tell you, if it's under 70, the tire gets cold and it's really tough to work with. So we're gonna do our best. But when you start, again, you want to start on the rim lock end. So go ahead, put this guy in. Go. There's that. And I like to go from, say in this position, 6 o'clock. I like to go to maybe 4 o'clock and put the next protector on there. With mounting tires, you really don't want to get greedy and try to go too far, because it's really just a waste of your time, and you could possibly damage. You bend your tire irons up and stuff like that. So just take your time. I'm going to 4 right there. So, and then most importantly, I'm going to lubricate the whole bead. And you want to keep doing it through the whole process because it's really going to be helpful. And you need to go around again and make sure that inner tube isn't going to get pinched. So just put your fingers around through there and just make sure it's not sticking out on the wheel or in between the bead and the tire. So luckily these rim protectors actually push the inner tube away, which is really a nice thing. But if you're doing a bare wheel and you don't care about the wheel, the tire iron will pinch the inner tube in here as you're doing it. So just want to be careful. And when you put the tire iron in, just go in just enough until it hits that lip. And check and double check. You're not pinching that tube. So I'm gonna go right there. It's kind of hell on your hands, if I'm being completely honest. It's a rough deal. So a lot of guys wear gloves, but we're not that smart. Gotta relax. I'm pulling it up just to make sure we're not pinching the inner tube. So back over there. Get that guy started down there. get greedy enough on this one, so I'm going to go a little further. So I guess it would be 3 o'clock. This guy. There we go. You can hear that bead seat. Darn it. Releasing this rim protector here. Sometimes the rim lock will fight you, so you just start just past it. But you want to get that bead started in there so it doesn't pop back out. That's the sound we're looking for. Yeah, so you can see now that the bead has been started here, and it's not going to come back up because we've got enough started. And you just want to finesse it just past that lip so it sticks and stays. With the lube, it's kind of difficult because the lubricant is doing its job and keeping it lubricated, so it's a fine line between having too much on there and not enough. You don't want to tear the tire, but also you don't want to have it be more harder than it needs to be. Kind of got to jump around too, so if you start seeing the opposite end pulling up, you want to go back in and push it back down. This is where you pitch tubes right here. Relieve that slowly. Oops. There we go. Almost there. Sometimes that happens. But these things keep their shape. These things are pretty darn cool, man, for the 20 bucks that they cost. Oh wait, it's 23. They probably cost $50 now. But still worth their weight in gold. Alright, here goes nothing. We're gonna air up our back tire here, and hopefully we don't have any leaks. And you can kind of see again, the bead should be uniform all the way around. It's kind of hard to tell with all the bubbles there. Here's a good example of the bead not being fully seated. Right here you can see how there's a big, I call it a rim protection lip right here, and see how it's not all the way out. So that just means we have to go a little further with the air. There we go. Now it is. Now the bead is fully seated. You can see that uniform lip all the way around the tire. And check this side too. Make sure. You're gonna see bubbles. Don't let that freak you out. It just means that the air is coming out of inside the tire there, so. And still a little too high. And a half. We like 14 in the mud, and 11 or 12 in the front for the mud, but in dry conditions we do like 12 in the rear and 10 or 11 in the front. So 14, I'm going to leave it like that, check it later on today. And again, real important, you want to take that valve stem nut and back it off First thing, you can actually tell if the valve stem's crooked. And the second thing is when the tire is under a load, it won't obviously slip on the wheel. That and our cap. You just run the cap down to the nut so it threads on. Oops. And it stays, actually keeps it from tightening, so it's got a little wiggle room there. So if the tire does slip, it won't shear that, it won't ruin your day. And then the other thing, you want to make sure your rim lock doesn't have any weirdness, deformities on both sides of the tire. Sometimes it'll actually kick out here slightly when it's tightened, and that's okay, it's normal. The most important thing is it's snug down. Acts as sort of a bead lock, if you will. You don't need to crank on it, just snug it. And we always check it after we ride, or when we go to prep our bikes to go ride. And there you have it, folks. New wheel set put together. And I should probably mention that we're doing this so we have a sand set for the bike and a dirt set, so we don't have to go through the rigmaroles of swapping out my tire every time we go to the sand, and then the following weekend we have to do it again. So I was initially looking for just another back wheel to put a paddle tire on. So what I'm going to do is use this wheel set for our dirt riding, and I'm going to use the stock set for sand riding. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and keep an eye out for more motorcycle, UTV, and classic car tech coming your way. Our very next video is going to be how to cut a chain and replace the drive set. So chain and sprockets coming up soon. Keep an eye out for it. Thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with a buddy. You never know who needs this information. We like to share our thoughts and our skill set. And remember, don't be afraid to do stuff on your own. Sometimes you gotta screw it up, but you know what? You did it. So it's really important to us. And comment. Tell us what you think about this stuff. We're open ears. Take care.